What if one narrow stretch of water had the power to shake the entire planet? A place where oil tankers carry the lifeblood of the global economy, where warships patrol day and night beneath the desert heat, and where one mistake could trigger worldwide chaos within hours. Welcome to the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most dangerous and strategically important waterways on Earth. Hidden behind headlines about oil, conflict, and geopolitics lies a world few people ever truly see. Ancient trade routes, secret islands, military tension, smuggling networks, forgotten coastal villages, and silent battles unfolding beneath the surface of the sea itself. This is not just a documentary about a shipping route. This is a journey into the hidden heart of global power, where the modern world depends on a fragile passage surrounded by fear, survival, and uncertainty. Every single day, the modern world holds its breath over a narrow strip of water most people will never see in person. A place so strategically important that a single mistake here could shake global economies, send fuel prices exploding overnight, and pull world powers toward the edge of conflict. This is the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most heavily watched and politically dangerous waterways on Earth. At first glance, it looks calm, almost peaceful beneath the burning desert sun. But beneath those waters moves the lifeblood of the global economy, and surrounding it is a level of tension invisible to most of the world. The Strait of Hormuz lies between Iran to the north and Oman and the United Arab Emirates to the south. On maps, it appears surprisingly small, a narrow passage connecting the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea beyond. Yet this tiny corridor controls the movement of nearly a fifth of the world's oil supply. Every day, massive oil tankers carrying billions of dollars in energy pass through these waters toward Asia, Europe, and the West. Entire nations depend on what happens here. Arriving near the strait feels unlike entering an ordinary shipping route. The atmosphere is heavy with surveillance, caution, and silent pressure. Giant cargo ships move slowly across the horizon like floating cities, while military vessels patrol nearby waters with constant vigilance. Fighter jets occasionally thunder overhead. Radar systems scan the skies and sea day and night. Every movement matters here. From the coastline, the geography itself feels dramatic and unforgiving. Harsh mountains rise directly from the sea, while dry desert landscapes stretch endlessly beneath intense heat. The sunlight is blinding during the day, reflecting sharply across the water and steel hulls of passing ships. At night, the darkness becomes eerie, broken only by navigation lights, distant ports, and the glowing outlines of tankers silently crossing the narrow channel. The strait is surprisingly narrow for something carrying so much global importance. At its tightest point, it is only about 33 kilometers wide, and the actual shipping lanes used by tankers are far smaller. Ships entering and exiting the Persian Gulf must pass through tightly controlled corridors, where navigation mistakes, political tension, or military incidents could create international crises within hours. Standing near the shoreline, it becomes impossible not to notice the scale of the ships moving through these waters. Some oil tankers are among the largest vessels ever built by humans, carrying millions of barrels of crude oil across the sea. Their engines rumble deeply through the air, while tugboats guide them carefully through crowded lanes surrounded by military observation. But beyond the massive ships lies something even more powerful: the feeling that the entire world is connected to this place, whether people realize it or not. Fuel powering cars in distant cities, electricity supporting industries, airplanes crossing continents, and economies functioning across the globe all depend in some way on the uninterrupted flow of energy through this narrow passage. That reality has transformed the Strait of Hormuz into one of the most politically sensitive locations on Earth. The tension here is constant, even when nothing appears to happen. Naval forces from multiple countries operate in the region at all times. Surveillance aircraft monitor activity overhead. International alliances quietly calculate risks beneath the surface of diplomacy. Every passing tanker carries not only oil, but enormous geopolitical importance. For local fishermen, this militarized environment has become part of daily life. Small wooden boats still move through the waters, while giant tankers tower above them like steel mountains. Traditional fishing communities survive beside one of the most strategic energy routes in history, adapting to growing military presence and industrial expansion surrounding the coastline. The heat near the strait can feel relentless. During summer, temperatures climb high enough to make the air itself shimmer above the desert landscape. Crews working aboard ships endure exhausting conditions while navigating one of the busiest and most politically unstable maritime choke points in the world. Despite the tension, there is also strange beauty here. Sunsets over the strait paint the sky in deep orange and crimson, while mountains fade into shadows along the horizon. The sea becomes calm and reflective, almost hiding the enormous global pressure carried through these waters every day. But the calm is deceptive. Over the decades, the Strait of Hormuz has repeatedly become the center of international crises, military confrontations, ship seizures, and threats capable of affecting the entire world economy. Headlines often focus on brief moments of conflict, yet what most people never see is the constant invisible tension existing here every hour of every day. The region surrounding the strait also carries layers of history far older than modern oil politics. Long before giant tankers crossed these waters, ancient empires fought for control of the same route. Traders carrying silk, spices, pearls, and precious goods once sailed through these narrow channels, while pirates and naval powers battled across the Gulf. Even today, the strait feels suspended between ancient history and modern global power. Traditional wooden dhows still sail near advanced warships equipped with missiles and surveillance technology. Ancient coastal settlements exist beside heavily fortified military infrastructure. The old world and the modern world collide here more visibly than almost anywhere else on Earth. As darkness falls across the strait, lights from tankers stretch endlessly across the water while naval patrols continue silently through the night. Somewhere beyond the horizon, economies depend on these ships reaching their destinations safely. Somewhere else, governments monitor every movement unfolding in the narrow corridor below. Because in the Strait of Hormuz, nothing is ever just local. Every wave, every ship, and every political decision carries consequences capable of reaching the entire planet. And beneath the silence of the sea lies a history shaped by empires, trade, war, and centuries of struggle for control over one of the world's most valuable waterways. Long before oil tankers and warships filled these waters, the Strait of Hormuz was already one of the most powerful gateways on Earth. Empires rose and collapsed around it. Traders crossed dangerous seas to reach it. Pirates hunted ships within it. And armies fought bloody battles for the right to control it. For thousands of years, this narrow waterway connected worlds together, linking east and west through trade, wealth, religion, and conquest. The modern world may see the Strait of Hormuz as an energy corridor, but its true story began long before oil was ever discovered beneath the desert sands. Ancient sailors entering the Persian Gulf understood immediately why this region mattered. The strait formed the only maritime entrance into one of the richest and most strategically important regions in the ancient world. Whoever controlled these waters controlled trade flowing between Mesopotamia, Persia, India, East Africa, and beyond. Long before modern borders existed, powerful civilizations flourished around the Gulf. The Persian Empire, one of history's greatest empires, expanded its influence across these waters centuries before the rise of Rome. Persian kings understood that trade routes were as valuable as armies. Ships carrying spices, silk, ivory, precious stones, incense, and pearls passed through the strait constantly, creating enormous wealth for those who controlled access to the region. The sea itself became a living highway connecting distant civilizations. Traders from India sailed westward carrying textiles, spices, and exotic goods. Arab merchants crossed the Gulf, navigating by stars and seasonal winds. Persian ports became centers of culture, commerce, and diplomacy, where languages, religions, and ideas mixed together beneath the desert heat. At night, ancient sailors relied on little more than moonlight, stars, and deep knowledge of the sea to navigate the dangerous waters. Sudden storms, strong currents, hidden rocks, and piracy made every journey risky. Yet despite the dangers, ships continued coming because the wealth flowing through the strait was too valuable to ignore. Pearls once made the Gulf region famous, long before oil transformed the modern Middle East. Divers descended into dark waters, holding only ropes and primitive tools, searching the seabed for oysters hiding precious pearls. Entire coastal communities survived through pearl trading for centuries, building fortunes from the sea surrounding the strait. But wherever wealth moved, conflict followed. Pirates became a constant threat throughout the region's history. Hidden coves, isolated islands, and narrow shipping routes created perfect conditions for attacks on merchant vessels. Armed raiders targeted ships carrying gold, spices, textiles, and other valuable cargo crossing the Gulf. Some coastal settlements gained reputations for piracy, powerful enough to terrify traders across the region. Empires repeatedly fought to dominate the strait because controlling it meant controlling trade itself. Persian dynasties defended the Gulf fiercely, while outside powers attempted to break into the region's economic networks. Over centuries, Greeks, Arabs, Portuguese, Ottomans, and British forces all became involved in struggles surrounding these waters. One of the most dramatic chapters began during the Age of Exploration in the 16th century. Portuguese explorers arrived seeking control over global trade routes connecting Europe to Asia. Armed with powerful naval technology, Portugal attempted to dominate the Indian Ocean and key maritime choke points across the region. The Portuguese eventually seized Hormuz Island, located near the strait itself, transforming it into a heavily fortified trading center. Massive stone forts were built overlooking the sea, while taxes were imposed on passing trade ships. For decades, the island became one of the most valuable ports in the world. Walking through the ruins of old Portuguese forts today still feels haunting. Thick stone walls rise above the coastline, while rust-colored mountains surround the sea beyond. Cannons once pointed toward passing ships now sit silent beneath the sun, reminders of centuries when control over the strait meant immense power and wealth. But foreign domination of the region never lasted peacefully. Persian rulers eventually fought back, forming alliances to expel Portuguese forces from the Gulf. Naval battles erupted across the waters while regional powers struggled constantly for influence over the strategic trade routes. The strait also became deeply connected to the Silk Road network linking Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. While much of the Silk Road crossed deserts and mountains by land, maritime routes through the Persian Gulf became increasingly important for transporting goods between civilizations. Ports near the strait evolved into multicultural centers filled with merchants, sailors, scholars, and travelers from across the known world. Religion spread through these waters as well. Islam expanded rapidly throughout the Gulf after the 7th century, transforming the region culturally and politically. Mosques, markets, and trading cities flourished along the coastline, while Islamic scholarship and maritime trade strengthened connections between distant parts of the Muslim world. For ordinary people living near the strait, survival always depended on the sea. Fishing communities adapted to the harsh climate and unpredictable waters, while traders built lives around maritime commerce. Even today, many traditional coastal villages still carry echoes of these ancient histories beneath the shadow of modern geopolitics. The geography of the strait itself shaped its importance throughout history. Its narrowness created both opportunity and danger. Ships passing through could be monitored, taxed, attacked, or protected depending on who controlled the surrounding coastline. That reality has remained unchanged for thousands of years. As centuries passed, empires changed, but the strategic value of the strait never disappeared. British influence later expanded across the Gulf during the 19th and 20th centuries as global industrial powers realized how critical maritime trade routes had become. Then, oil was discovered, transforming the region forever. Suddenly, the ancient trade corridor evolved into the energy artery of the modern world. Yet beneath the modern tankers, pipelines, and military fleets, the deeper history of the Strait of Hormuz still remains alive. Ancient trade routes became shipping lanes. Old pirate waters became geopolitical battlegrounds. Forts once guarding spice merchants now overlook oil tankers carrying the fuel of global civilization. And in the modern age, the struggle for control over these waters has become more dangerous than ever before, pulling world powers, regional rivals, espionage networks, and military alliances into one of the most tense geopolitical regions on Earth. Every few weeks, somewhere in the world, headlines suddenly begin flashing warnings about the Strait of Hormuz. Oil prices jump. Governments issue statements. Military forces increase alert levels. News channels speak about threats, sanctions, naval confrontations, and fears of global disruption. Then, just as quickly, attention fades again. But what most people never realize is that the tension inside the Strait of Hormuz never truly disappears. Beneath the surface of daily headlines exists a constant geopolitical standoff involving some of the most powerful nations on Earth. The modern Strait of Hormuz is far more than a shipping route. It is a pressure point where global energy dependence, military power, political rivalry, and economic survival collide every single day. Nearly 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes through this narrow corridor, meaning even small disruptions here can affect economies across Asia, Europe, and the Americas within hours. At the center of this geopolitical tension stands Iran. The northern coastline of the strait belongs largely to Iran, giving the country enormous strategic influence over the waterway. Iranian military bases, missile systems, radar installations, and naval forces line parts of the coast overlooking the shipping lanes. From the perspective of global powers, this geography creates both fear and vulnerability. Because if conflict ever escalated seriously, Iran could potentially threaten one of the world's most critical energy routes. For decades, relations between Iran and Western nations, especially the United States, have remained deeply hostile. Economic sanctions, political disputes, nuclear negotiations, and regional conflicts have repeatedly pushed tensions to dangerous levels. And whenever pressure increases, the Strait of Hormuz often becomes the center of international concern. The atmosphere in the region feels permanently cautious. Naval vessels patrol the waters constantly while surveillance aircraft monitor movements from the sky above. Warships from the United States, Britain, and allied Gulf nations regularly operate near the strait, escorting commercial ships and projecting military presence through the region. At times, the tension becomes visible to the entire world. Tankers have been seized. Drones have been shot down. Explosions have damaged commercial vessels. Armed patrol boats have approached international ships in tense encounters, captured by military cameras. Each incident sends shockwaves through financial markets because global economies understand how fragile this corridor truly is. For sailors crossing the strait, the geopolitical conflict is not abstract politics. It is part of daily reality. Tanker crews monitor security warnings carefully, while ships follow tightly controlled navigation routes through heavily monitored waters. In some periods of heightened tension, commercial vessels travel under military escort, surrounded by naval ships designed to protect them from potential attacks. The Gulf states surrounding the strait also play major roles in this geopolitical landscape. Countries such as Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar depend heavily on energy exports moving safely through the region. Their economies are deeply tied to the uninterrupted flow of oil and gas toward global markets. This dependence creates enormous strategic importance. A disruption in the strait would not simply affect local politics. It could raise fuel prices worldwide, damage supply chains, destabilize economies, and increase international pressure for military intervention. The United States has maintained a major military presence in the Gulf for decades, largely because of this reality. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, surveillance systems, and military bases form part of an extensive network designed to secure maritime trade routes through the region. Some of the world's most advanced military technology now operates in and around the Strait of Hormuz. Yet despite the overwhelming military presence, uncertainty remains constant. Part of the tension comes from the geography itself. The strait is narrow, crowded, and difficult to fully control. Commercial ships, fishing boats, military patrols, helicopters, and surveillance drones all move through the same confined waters. One misunderstanding, one technical failure, or one aggressive maneuver could rapidly escalate into an international crisis. Espionage also plays a hidden role in the region. Intelligence agencies from multiple countries operate quietly throughout the Gulf, gathering information on military movements, shipping activity, oil infrastructure, and political developments. Satellite systems track vessels constantly, while cyber warfare and electronic surveillance have become central parts of modern geopolitical competition here. The shadow of conflict never feels far away. Iranian military exercises sometimes include missile launches and naval drills near the strait, sending political messages to rivals and the international community. Western military alliances respond with increased patrols and joint operations. Diplomatic negotiations rise and collapse repeatedly, while energy markets react nervously to every development. But beneath the global politics are millions of ordinary people living their daily lives around the Gulf. Fishermen continue working near heavily militarized waters. Port workers load cargo beneath the shadow of warships. families in coastal towns adapt to living beside one of the world's most politically sensitive regions. The contrast feels surreal. Luxury skyscrapers rise along parts of the Gulf coastline, while nearby military radar systems scan the horizon continuously. Massive oil terminals operate beside ancient fishing villages. Traditional wooden dhows cross paths with advanced naval destroyers carrying missiles and surveillance equipment worth billions of dollars. And always, the tankers continue moving. Day and night, giant ships loaded with crude oil pass silently through the strait, carrying the fuel powering modern civilization. Their routes are carefully tracked by governments, corporations, intelligence agencies, and military commands around the world. So much global dependence flows through this narrow passage that its stability has become an international obsession. Yet many experts quietly acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. The Strait of Hormuz may be one of the most strategically important places on Earth, but it is also one of the most vulnerable. As darkness falls across the Gulf, lights from tankers stretch across the horizon, while naval patrols continue through the warm night waters. Somewhere beneath the silence of the sea, submarines may move unseen. Radar systems remain active along distant coastlines. Surveillance satellites continue orbiting high above. Because in the Strait of Hormuz, peace and tension exist together constantly. The modern world depends on these waters remaining open, yet the political forces surrounding them remain unstable, unpredictable, and deeply dangerous. And for the crews guiding massive oil tankers through this narrow corridor every day, the pressure of crossing one of the world's most watched waterways becomes a reality unlike almost anywhere else on Earth. At first glance, an oil tanker moving through the Strait of Hormuz appears almost indestructible. These giant steel vessels tower above the sea like floating cities, carrying millions of barrels of crude oil worth enormous fortunes as they move slowly through one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth. But for the crews living aboard them, every crossing through the strait carries invisible pressure. Because inside these narrow waters, one mistake, one technical failure, or one political incident could turn an ordinary voyage into an international crisis within minutes. The scale of modern oil tankers is difficult to fully understand until you stand beside one. Some are longer than skyscrapers laid on their sides, with engines powerful enough to move hundreds of thousands of tons across entire oceans. Their massive hulls cut slowly through the warm Gulf waters, while navigation systems, radar screens, and communication equipment operate continuously inside the bridge above. Crossing the Strait of Hormuz is unlike sailing through ordinary commercial routes. Every movement is monitored. Every route is tightly controlled. And every captain understands the enormous responsibility resting on their decisions. These ships are not simply carrying cargo. They are transporting the fuel that powers economies, industries, airlines, cities, and millions of lives around the world. The journey often begins deep inside the Persian Gulf at giant oil terminals surrounded by pipelines, storage tanks, and industrial ports glowing beneath desert heat. Crude oil is pumped aboard for hours while crews prepare for departure carefully. Once loaded, the ship becomes astonishingly heavy, moving slowly and requiring enormous distances to change direction or stop. As the vessel approaches the strait, the atmosphere changes immediately. Traffic increases. Military patrols appear more frequently. Communication between ships becomes constant as tankers enter the narrow shipping corridors, guiding traffic safely in and out of the Gulf. The actual navigation lanes inside the strait are surprisingly tight considering the enormous volume of global trade passing through them every day. Inside the bridge, officers monitor radar screens continuously. Cargo ships, fishing boats, military vessels, and smaller commercial traffic all move through the same crowded waters. Navigation requires intense concentration because even a small collision or grounding could block shipping routes with catastrophic global consequences. Weather adds another layer of danger. Extreme heat, heavy fog, powerful currents, and sudden sandstorms can reduce visibility dramatically. During certain seasons, thick haze hangs over the water, while strong winds push against the enormous tankers moving through narrow lanes. Despite advanced navigation technology, nature still remains unpredictable here. But the greatest pressure often comes not from weather, but from politics. Crews crossing the strait understand they are sailing through one of the most militarized and politically tense regions on Earth. Reports of naval confrontations, drone activity, ship seizures, and regional conflicts are discussed constantly aboard commercial vessels. Security warnings arrive regularly through maritime communication systems, advising ships about potential threats or suspicious activity in surrounding waters. At night, the tension can feel especially intense. The Gulf becomes dark and strangely silent, except for the lights of ships scattered across the horizon. Radar systems continue scanning constantly, while military aircraft occasionally pass overhead unseen in the darkness. Crew members watch distant patrol boats moving through the water while maintaining careful radio communication with regional maritime authorities. Some tanker crews have experienced direct encounters with armed forces operating in the region. Patrol boats approaching unexpectedly. Military helicopters circling overhead. Radio instructions demanding identification and route confirmation. Even when incidents end peacefully, the psychological pressure remains enormous. Piracy and sabotage also remain serious concerns. While the Gulf is heavily monitored, attacks on commercial ships have occurred during periods of regional tension. Explosions damaging hulls, mines attached to vessels, and suspicious drone sightings have all become part of modern maritime security fears inside the strait. To reduce risks, some commercial tankers travel under military escort during periods of heightened tension. Naval warships shadow commercial traffic while surveillance aircraft monitor activity overhead. Yet even with advanced security measures, crews know they remain vulnerable in such strategically sensitive waters. Life aboard these giant vessels can feel isolated despite the global importance of the mission. Crews often spend weeks or months at sea far from their families while working exhausting schedules inside intense heat. Engine rooms roar continuously beneath the ship, while endless maintenance keeps the massive vessel operational. The emotional strain becomes especially heavy inside the strait itself. Sailors understand that their ship may appear on international news within hours if anything goes wrong. A navigation accident, mechanical failure, or political confrontation could instantly transform a routine crossing into global headlines affecting oil prices and international diplomacy. Yet despite the risks, the crossings continue endlessly. Every single day, fleets of tankers enter and exit the strait carrying oil toward China, India, Japan, South Korea, Europe, and beyond. Modern civilization depends so heavily on energy flowing through these waters that stopping the traffic entirely would send shockwaves across the global economy almost immediately. The contrast surrounding the strait feels surreal. Luxury cities glow along parts of the Gulf coastline, while nearby warships patrol aggressively through strategic waters. Ancient fishing boats drift beside giant industrial vessels carrying enough oil to power entire nations. The old world and modern global industry collide constantly beneath the desert sky. Sunrise aboard a tanker crossing the strait can feel strangely beautiful despite the tension. Golden light spreads across calm waters, while mountains emerge slowly along the coastline. Giant ships move silently through the morning haze, while crews continue their work beneath intense heat already building across the Gulf. For many sailors, the Strait of Hormuz becomes more than a dangerous shipping route. It becomes a symbol of how deeply interconnected and fragile the modern world truly is. A narrow stretch of water capable of influencing fuel prices, economies, politics, and international security thousands of kilometers away. And surrounding these crowded shipping lanes lie hidden coastlines and mysterious islands rarely seen by outsiders, places where abandoned forts, isolated fishing villages, and barren volcanic landscapes reveal another side of the strait hidden behind the headlines and military tension. Most people imagine the Strait of Hormuz only as a place of oil tankers, military ships, and geopolitical tension. News headlines reduce it to maps, conflict warnings, and global energy statistics. But beyond the crowded shipping lanes and surveillance systems lies another world almost never shown to outsiders. A world of isolated islands, abandoned forts, hidden fishing villages, volcanic mountains, and surreal landscapes so strange they feel disconnected from modern civilization entirely. The coastline surrounding the Strait of Hormuz is harsh, remote, and breathtakingly beautiful. Jagged mountains rise directly from the sea while barren deserts stretch endlessly beneath a burning sky. During the day, the sunlight reflects off the rocky cliffs with blinding intensity, turning the entire landscape into shades of red, brown, gold, and deep orange. At night, silence covers the coast, while distant tanker lights drift slowly across the horizon like floating stars. Many of the islands scattered around the strait feel mysterious, because so few people ever visit them. Some are heavily restricted because of military importance. Others remain isolated simply because of geography, climate, and lack of infrastructure. Yet hidden among them are places carrying centuries of forgotten history and natural beauty, unlike anywhere else on Earth. One of the most extraordinary places near the strait is Hormuz Island itself. Floating near the entrance to the Persian Gulf, the island appears almost unreal from a distance. Its mountains glow in shades of crimson, purple, and rust red beneath the desert sun, creating landscapes that resemble another planet more than Earth. The island's strange appearance comes from its volcanic geology and mineral-rich soil. Walking across Hormuz feels surreal. The ground changes color constantly beneath your feet, while salt formations rise from the earth like frozen waves. Cliffs glow bright red at sunset, while caves, valleys, and rock formations create landscapes shaped by millions of years of heat and wind. Despite its beauty, Hormuz Island also carries the weight of history. Portuguese forts built centuries ago still stand overlooking the sea, their weathered stone walls reminding visitors of the time when European powers fought fiercely for control over the strait. Cannons once aimed toward passing trade ships now sit abandoned beneath endless desert skies. Exploring these old fortresses feels haunting. Narrow corridors echo with silence while rust-colored mountains surround the coastline beyond. Standing atop the old walls, you can see modern oil tankers moving slowly through the same waters once crossed by ancient merchants, pirates, and war fleets. Further along the coast lie fishing villages almost untouched by tourism or global attention. Small wooden boats rest beside quiet harbors, while fishermen repair nets beneath intense heat. Life in these communities remains deeply connected to the sea, despite the enormous geopolitical tension surrounding them. In some villages, traditional dhow boats still sail across the Gulf, much as they did centuries ago. These wooden vessels once carried spices, pearls, textiles, and goods across ancient maritime trade routes, linking Arabia, Persia, India, and East Africa. Even today, they continue moving quietly beside giant industrial tankers and advanced military patrol ships. The contrast feels almost impossible to believe. Modern radar systems scan the horizon, while nearby fishermen prepare nets by hand using techniques passed down through generations. Massive oil terminals glow at night, while isolated coastal communities survive through fishing, trade, and small local markets, much as they always have. The landscape surrounding the strait also feels surprisingly empty. Beyond a few ports and settlements, enormous stretches of coastline remain wild and isolated. Dry mountains rise sharply from the sea, while hidden coves and rocky beaches disappear into silence. Some areas feel so remote that it becomes difficult to imagine one of the world's busiest energy corridors existing only a short distance away. On certain islands, the heat becomes overwhelming. Temperatures climb so high during summer that the rocks themselves radiate warmth long after sunset. Water is scarce, vegetation limited, and survival has always required adaptation to one of the harshest climates on Earth. Yet despite the difficult conditions, people have lived here for thousands of years. Ancient traders once used these islands as resting points during long sea voyages. Pirates hid within hidden bays, waiting to ambush commercial vessels crossing the Gulf. Pearl divers sailed from coastal villages searching the waters for treasures long before oil transformed the region forever. There are also rumors and stories whispered quietly among sailors and locals about hidden military sites, underground tunnels, restricted islands, and surveillance installations scattered throughout the region. Because of the strait's enormous strategic importance, secrecy has become part of the landscape itself. Some islands remain almost completely closed to outsiders due to military activity. Satellite systems monitor the area constantly, while radar installations and patrol routes operate quietly beyond public view. The line between natural beauty and geopolitical tension often feels blurred here. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about the region is how beautiful it becomes at sunset. As the heat slowly fades, the mountains glow deep red and orange beneath the evening light. Calm waters reflect the colors of the sky, while distant tankers drift silently toward the horizon. The harshness of the landscape suddenly transforms into something peaceful and almost dreamlike. Then darkness arrives. Under the night sky, the strait feels mysterious in a completely different way. Lights from ships stretch endlessly across the sea, while isolated villages disappear into silence along the coast. Somewhere beyond the horizon, military patrols continue monitoring the waters. Somewhere else, giant tankers carry the fuel powering modern civilization. And hidden between all of it are forgotten forts, isolated communities, ancient trade routes, and landscapes carrying stories most of the world never hears. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not simply a geopolitical hotspot, it is also a place where history, isolation, survival, beauty, and global power collide beneath one of the harshest and most mysterious environments on Earth. And beneath that silence, one of the most heavily militarized security systems in the world continues operating day and night, transforming the strait into a battlefield of surveillance, naval power, submarines, drones, and invisible tension hidden just beyond public view. There are few places on Earth where so many weapons, surveillance systems, and military forces operate so closely together every single day. Beneath the calm surface of the Strait of Hormuz exists an invisible battlefield of radar signals, submarines, drones, satellites, missiles, and warships constantly watching one another across the narrow waters. To the outside world, the strait may appear to be only a busy shipping route, but in reality, it has become one of the most heavily militarized waterways on the planet, a place where global powers maintain permanent readiness for a conflict nobody wants, but everyone prepares for. The military presence surrounding the strait begins long before you ever see the water itself. Along coastlines stretching across Iran, Oman, the United Arab Emirates, and nearby Gulf states, radar installations scan the horizon continuously, while surveillance systems track every major vessel entering or leaving the Persian Gulf. Military air bases operate nearby with fighter jets prepared for rapid response missions, while naval commands monitor shipping traffic 24 hours a day. At sea, the scale of military activity feels overwhelming. Massive destroyers and frigates patrol strategic areas while smaller fast attack boats move aggressively through the shipping lanes. Surveillance helicopters hover above the water, and advanced drones fly silently overhead, gathering intelligence on ship movements and military operations throughout the region. For the United States and its allies, the strait represents one of the most strategically critical locations in modern geopolitics. Entire naval fleets operate in the Gulf to guarantee that commercial shipping routes remain open. Aircraft carriers carrying thousands of personnel and dozens of fighter jets regularly deploy nearby, projecting military power across the region. An aircraft carrier crossing Gulf waters feels almost unreal in size and presence. These floating military bases are among the most powerful machines ever built by humans. And fighter jets launch from their decks within minutes, while radar systems scan hundreds of kilometers across sea and sky. Escort destroyers surround them, equipped with missiles capable of intercepting aircraft, drones, and ballistic threats. Yet despite all this firepower, tension in the strait remains fragile. Iran's military strategy focuses heavily on the geography of the strait itself. Because the waterway is narrow and crowded, even smaller military assets can create enormous disruption. Fast patrol boats, anti-ship missiles, naval mines, coastal radar systems, and drone networks all form part of Iran's defensive posture along the northern coastline. Military exercises frequently take place throughout the region. Warships conduct maneuvers, while fighter jets roar above the Gulf during training missions designed to demonstrate readiness and power. Missile tests sometimes occur near strategic waters, sending political signals far beyond the Middle East. Submarines also operate quietly beneath the surface of the Gulf and surrounding seas. Invisible to ordinary ships, they patrol strategic zones, gathering intelligence and preparing for worst-case scenarios that governments rarely discuss publicly. Modern submarine warfare has transformed the region into a place where unseen forces may exist beneath almost every stretch of water. The strait has also become a major center for electronic warfare and surveillance technology. Intelligence agencies monitor communication networks constantly, while satellites track vessel movements across the Gulf in real time. Advanced radar systems identify aircraft and ships hundreds of kilometers away, while cyber operations quietly target infrastructure, navigation systems, and military communications. Much of this invisible conflict never appears in public headlines. Behind closed doors, military planners from multiple countries study scenarios involving attacks on shipping lanes, drone strikes, missile launches, and naval confrontations. War games simulate possible crises, while intelligence analysts examine every unusual movement occurring inside the strait. For commercial ships crossing the region, the military presence creates a strange atmosphere. Tanker crews often see armed patrol vessels shadowing traffic routes, while helicopters circle overhead during periods of heightened tension. Warships equipped with advanced weapon systems may appear suddenly near commercial lanes, reminding everyone how quickly peace could collapse into confrontation. One of the greatest fears surrounding the strait is the possibility of miscalculation. Because so many military forces operate in close proximity, even small misunderstandings can become dangerous. A patrol boat approaching too aggressively, a drone entering restricted airspace, a radar lock interpreted as hostile intent. History has shown repeatedly how rapidly tension can escalate in these crowded waters. There have already been moments when the world came dangerously close to wider conflict in the Gulf. Tankers damaged by explosions, naval vessels seized, surveillance drones destroyed. Each incident triggered international alarm because global leaders understand how much depends on keeping the strait stable. Military infrastructure throughout the region continues expanding because the strategic importance of the strait keeps growing. New naval bases, missile defense systems, drone programs, and intelligence facilities appear regularly across Gulf nations determined to protect their economic and security interests. Yet beyond the advanced technology and military hardware are thousands of ordinary service members living and working in extreme conditions. Sailors endure exhausting patrols beneath intense desert heat, while pilots fly surveillance missions over politically sensitive waters. The boats used for smuggling are often small, fast, and difficult to track among the crowded traffic of the Gulf. Some move close to the coastline using local knowledge of currents, hidden passages, and patrol patterns passed down through generations. Others operate farther offshore, blending temporarily among fishing vessels or commercial traffic before disappearing into darkness again. Night crossings can be terrifying. The Gulf may appear calm from a distance, but navigating secretly through these waters carries enormous danger. Military patrols monitor suspicious activity constantly, while storms, strong currents, and navigation mistakes can quickly become deadly. Smugglers know that interception may lead to arrest, confiscation of cargo, imprisonment, or worse. Yet the trade continues because the profits can be life-changing. Beyond fuel, underground networks transport electronics, cigarettes, textiles, alcohol, banned goods, and sometimes even people seeking escape from economic hardship or political instability. Some routes stretch far beyond the Gulf itself, connecting international black markets operating across the Middle East, South Asia, and East Africa. Whispers of larger criminal networks also surround the strait. Intelligence agencies and regional authorities have long suspected that organized smuggling groups exploit the crowded maritime environment to move illegal cargo beneath the shadow of global trade. The sheer volume of commercial traffic passing through the region every day creates opportunities for concealment difficult to fully eliminate. Traditional dhow boats often play a role in this hidden economy. These wooden vessels have sailed Gulf waters for centuries, carrying legitimate cargo between ports across the region. But some also participate in informal trade operating beyond official regulations and customs systems. Walking through certain coastal markets near the strait reveals how blurred the line between legal and illegal commerce can become. Imported goods appear mysteriously in remote villages. Fuel changes hands quietly. Traders speak carefully about routes and connections while avoiding unwanted attention from authorities. At the same time, governments across the region invest heavily in stopping smuggling operations. Coastal radar systems, patrol boats, drones, helicopters, and intelligence networks monitor suspicious activity continuously. Security forces conduct nighttime interceptions, while customs officials inspect cargo moving through ports and border crossings. The tension between enforcement and survival creates a complicated reality. Many coastal families have lived through generations shaped by maritime trade, fishing, and movement across the Gulf. Borders established by modern states often cut across older cultural and economic connections that existed long before contemporary geopolitics transformed the region. For some communities, underground trade feels less like criminal activity and more like adaptation to economic pressure and political restrictions. The atmosphere surrounding these hidden networks feels secretive and cautious. Conversations lower when outsiders appear. Routes are rarely discussed openly. Trust becomes essential because betrayal can carry serious consequences. In some villages, nearly everyone knows the trade exists, but few speak about it directly. Even fishermen crossing the Gulf at night sometimes move through an environment filled with uncertainty. Naval patrols, surveillance drones, smugglers, and commercial traffic all share the same waters beneath darkness. Distinguishing ordinary fishing activity from illegal movement becomes increasingly difficult in such crowded and politically sensitive conditions. There are still moments when nature reminds the region of its power. Storms occasionally sweep across the Gulf with sudden violence, while strong currents and dangerous weather disrupt maritime traffic. The desert itself constantly reshapes coastlines through wind, heat, and erosion. Even the giant industrial infrastructure dominating the region remains vulnerable to the forces of nature surrounding it. As evening approaches, temperatures slowly begin to fall while lights from ports and tankers illuminate the water across the strait. Oil continues flowing toward distant nations. Ships continue crossing the narrow lanes. Military patrols continue monitoring the horizon. But beneath the movement of global commerce lies a fragile environment, struggling to survive under enormous pressure. Because the Strait of Hormuz is not simply a geopolitical hotspot or an industrial corridor, it is also home to millions of ordinary people whose lives unfold between desert and sea, communities shaped by tradition, religion, fishing, trade, and survival in the shadow of one of the world's most important waterways. Behind the oil tankers, military patrols, and political headlines surrounding the Strait of Hormuz lives another reality the world rarely sees. Along these harsh coastlines, between desert mountains and the sea, millions of ordinary people continue living their daily lives beneath the shadow of one of the most strategically important waterways on Earth. Fishermen sail into dangerous waters before sunrise. Families gather inside quiet coastal homes as giant ships pass silently on the horizon. Ancient traditions survive beside military bases, industrial ports, and the endless pressure of global politics. Life near the strait has always been shaped by the sea. Long before oil transformed the Gulf into the center of the global energy industry, coastal communities survived through fishing, pearl diving, and maritime trade. The rhythms of daily life followed tides, seasons, and winds crossing the Gulf. Even today, despite rapid modernization in parts of the region, many families remain deeply connected to traditions passed down for generations. Before dawn, fishing villages begin to wake slowly beneath the warm desert air. Wooden boats rest quietly along the shoreline while fishermen prepare nets, fuel engines, and organize supplies for the day ahead. The smell of salt water, diesel fuel, and fresh fish fills the harbors while distant calls to prayer echo across the coast. As the first light touches the sea, small fishing boats head toward open water, while massive oil tankers move silently across the horizon beyond them. The contrast feels extraordinary. Ancient ways of life continue beside one of the most industrialized maritime corridors on Earth. For many fishermen, the Gulf is both provider and source of danger. Storms can appear suddenly, while military restrictions, shipping traffic, and environmental pressure have made traditional fishing increasingly difficult. Yet despite these challenges, generations continue returning to the sea because it remains central to their identity and survival. The culture surrounding the strait reflects centuries of trade and connection between civilizations. Persian, Arab, African, Indian, and South Asian influences have mixed together across Gulf communities for hundreds of years. Markets, food, music, and language all carry traces of this long maritime history. In coastal towns, traditional markets still operate beneath intense desert heat. Narrow streets fill with the sounds of bargaining, conversation, and movement, while merchants sell spices, textiles, seafood, tea, incense, and imported goods from across the region. The atmosphere feels alive with history. The scent of cardamom, grilled fish, saffron, and strong tea drifts through crowded market alleys, while older men gather quietly discussing politics, weather, and fishing conditions beneath shaded storefronts. Young people move between smartphones and ancient traditions, balancing modern life with deep cultural roots. Islam shapes daily life throughout the region surrounding the strait. Mosques stand at the center of many communities, while the call to prayer echoes across cities, ports, villages, and coastlines 5 times each day. Religion provides structure, identity, and continuity in a region often defined externally only through conflict and oil. During evening prayer, the atmosphere changes completely. Busy streets become quieter while sunlight fades across the Gulf. In fishing villages and major cities alike, moments of stillness emerge beneath the enormous pressure of the outside world. Hospitality also remains deeply important throughout Gulf culture. Visitors are often welcomed warmly with tea, coffee, dates, and conversation, regardless of the political tension surrounding the region. In isolated coastal communities especially, generosity towards strangers continues as an essential cultural value shaped by centuries of survival in harsh environments. Traditional music still survives across parts of the Gulf as well. Rhythmic drumming, folk songs, and maritime chants connected to pearl diving and fishing history continue during festivals and cultural gatherings. Some songs carry sadness and longing, while others celebrate the sea, family, and endurance. Food near the strait reflects the region's unique position between desert and ocean. Fresh seafood remains central to many local dishes, while rice, spices, grilled meats, and traditional breads connect Gulf cuisine to broader Middle Eastern and South Asian influences. Meals are often shared communally, reinforcing strong family and social bonds. Yet daily life here also exists under constant geopolitical pressure. Many people living near the strait grow up surrounded by military activity, political uncertainty, and economic fluctuations tied directly to global oil markets. Fighter jets overhead, naval patrols offshore, and international headlines about regional tension become normal parts of the background environment. In some areas, rapid modernization has transformed the coastline dramatically. Towering skyscrapers, luxury developments, highways, and industrial zones rise beside older fishing communities struggling to preserve traditional ways of life. Wealth from oil reshaped much of the Gulf region within only a few decades, creating both opportunity and inequality. Young generations face difficult questions about identity and the future. Some embrace global modernity, while others seek to protect older cultural traditions threatened by urbanization, technology, and economic change. Across the Gulf, societies continue balancing ancient heritage with powerful forces of modernization. Despite everything, ordinary life continues. Children play beside coastal roads while giant tankers pass in the distance. Families gather for evening meals while political crises unfold on international news channels. Fishermen repair nets beside military patrol boats. Markets open every morning beneath skies crossed by surveillance aircraft and desert heat. This human reality is often forgotten when the strait appears in global headlines. To much of the outside world, the Strait of Hormuz exists mainly as a symbol of oil, power, and geopolitical tension. But for the people living here, it is also home. A place filled with memory, culture, faith, work, struggle, and survival. At sunset, the Gulf becomes strangely peaceful. Fishing boats return slowly toward shore while the sea reflects deep orange light beneath the fading sky. The heat begins to soften as evening spreads across the coastline. Calls to prayer rise again through the warm air, while lights from distant tankers appear across the darkening horizon. And beneath all the military tension, industrial power, and global dependence surrounding the strait remains something deeply human. Millions of people continuing their lives between sea and desert in one of the world's most watched, yet least understood regions. Because the true story of the Strait of Hormuz is not only about politics or oil, it is also about resilience, about communities surviving where empires, industries, and world powers have collided for centuries. And in the final chapter of this journey, the strait reveals why this narrow passage of water may remain one of the most dangerous, powerful, and uncertain places on Earth far into the future. There are places on Earth so important that the entire modern world depends on them without ever truly understanding them. The Strait of Hormuz is one of those places. A narrow corridor of water between desert mountains and open sea, where global power, fear, wealth, survival, and uncertainty collide every single day. To most people, it exists only as a name mentioned briefly during international crises or oil price spikes. But behind those headlines lies one of the most dangerous and strategically fragile regions on the planet, a place where the future of global energy, geopolitics, and human resilience remains deeply uncertain. By the end of this journey, the strait no longer feels like simply a shipping route. It feels like the beating artery of the modern world itself. Every day, enormous oil tankers continue crossing these waters, carrying the fuel powering industries, transportation, electricity, and economies across entire continents. Nations separated by oceans remain connected through this narrow maritime passage. A disruption here would not remain local. It would ripple outward across the entire global system within hours. That dependence has transformed the strait into a permanent zone of pressure. Military fleets patrol constantly beneath the desert sky, while radar systems scan the horizon day and night. Surveillance drones move silently overhead. Intelligence agencies monitor every political signal and maritime movement unfolding across the Gulf. Behind closed doors, governments prepare contingency plans for crises they hope never happen. Yet despite all the advanced technology and military power surrounding the strait, vulnerability remains impossible to eliminate. The geography itself creates fragility. The shipping lanes are narrow. The political tensions are deep. Regional rivalries remain unresolved, while global powers continue competing for influence across the Middle East. One accident, one attack, or one miscalculation could rapidly escalate beyond anyone's control. And perhaps the most unsettling reality is how invisible this danger feels to much of the world. Millions of people filling cars with fuel, boarding airplanes, using electricity, or buying products transported across global supply chains rarely think about the Strait of Hormuz. Yet their daily lives remain connected to the stability of these waters, whether they realize it or not. But beyond the geopolitics and economics lies something more human. This journey through the strait reveals not only military tension and industrial power, but also ordinary lives unfolding beside one of the world's most strategic waterways. Fishermen continue launching boats before sunrise. Families gather for evening meals while tankers cross the horizon. Workers endure brutal heat inside ports, refineries, and ships carrying the fuel of modern civilization. Communities survive here between sea and desert, just as they have for centuries. Long before oil transformed the Gulf, ancient traders crossed these same waters carrying silk, spices, pearls, and precious goods between civilizations. Empires rose and collapsed, trying to control this narrow passage. Pirates hunted merchant vessels, while fortresses guarded trade routes, shaping world history. Today the ships are larger, the technology more advanced, and the stakes far greater. But the deeper reality remains surprisingly similar. Control over the strait still means power. Access to its waters still shapes economies and politics. And ordinary people still adapt their lives around forces larger than themselves. There is also something haunting about the contrast defining the Strait of Hormuz. Ancient fishing villages exist beside massive industrial ports, glowing through the night. Traditional wooden dhows sail near advanced warships carrying missiles and surveillance systems. Desert silence stretches across coastlines while global markets react instantly to events unfolding offshore. The old world and the modern world collide here constantly. At sunset, the strait often looks calm beyond imagination. Golden light spreads across the Gulf, while mountains fade into shadows along the horizon. Oil tankers move silently through the narrow shipping lanes, while fishing boats return slowly toward shore. In those moments, the region almost hides the enormous tension living beneath its surface. Then darkness arrives. Lights from ships scatter across the water while military patrols continue through the night. Somewhere beyond the horizon, radar systems remain active. Intelligence networks continue monitoring the region. Beneath the sea, submarines may move unseen through warm Gulf waters. And always, the oil continues flowing. The future of the Strait of Hormuz remains uncertain because the world itself is changing. Global energy systems are evolving while climate pressure increases across the planet. Nations speak about renewable energy and reducing dependence on fossil fuels, yet the modern economy still relies heavily on the crude oil passing through this narrow corridor. At the same time, regional tensions remain deeply unresolved. Political rivalries, sanctions, military competition, and economic instability continue shaping the Gulf. Even as diplomats negotiate peace, governments prepare quietly for conflict. Perhaps that is why the strait feels so emotionally powerful. It represents both the strength and fragility of modern civilization at the same time. Humanity built a global system dependent on trade, energy, and interconnected economies. Yet so much of that system still relies on vulnerable places like this. Narrow waterways exposed to political tension, environmental risk, and human uncertainty. But despite everything, life continues. The fishermen still return to sea. Tanker crews still guide enormous ships through dangerous waters. Families still gather beside the coastline beneath the warm Gulf night. Markets still open each morning, while prayers echo across cities and villages, facing another day beneath the shadow of global power. The Strait of Hormuz is not simply a geopolitical hotspot hidden behind news headlines. It is a living region filled with history, beauty, danger, resilience, and contradiction. A place where ancient trade routes became the center of the modern energy world. A place where global dependence meets local survival. And as the final lights of the Gulf shimmer across the dark water beneath the desert sky, one realization becomes impossible to ignore. The world may appear vast and powerful, but sometimes its future depends on places far smaller, far more fragile, and far more mysterious than most people ever imagine. As our journey through the Strait of Hormuz comes to an end, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. The modern world may look powerful and unstoppable, but much of it still depends on places as fragile and unpredictable as this narrow corridor between desert and sea. Every day, giant tankers continue crossing these waters carrying the fuel powering cities, industries, transportation, and entire nations. Military fleets continue watching the horizon. Fishermen continue sailing before sunrise. Families continue living beneath the shadow of global politics while the world beyond rarely notices them. The Strait of Hormuz is more than a geopolitical hotspot. It is a place where ancient history and modern power collide. A place where empires once fought for trade routes, and where today nations compete for control over energy and influence. Behind every headline about oil prices or military tension are real people, real communities, and a harsh environment shaped by survival, resilience, and uncertainty. And perhaps that is what makes the strait so haunting. Beneath the endless movement of ships and politics lies a constant reminder of how connected and vulnerable our world truly is. A single waterway, narrow enough to cross in a short flight, still holds the power to affect billions of lives across the planet. As darkness settles across the Gulf and the lights of tankers drift silently across the horizon, the Strait of Hormuz remains what it has always been: mysterious, dangerous, beautiful, and essential to the world beyond it. Thanks for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed exploring Prague as much as I enjoyed guiding you through it. If you found this travel guide helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more beautiful destinations from around the world. Got a favorite spot in Prague? Drop it in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, safe travels, and see you in the next video.